Test. Sort of worked. Everybody kind of got quiet. How's everybody doing? This is better. I gave a talk the first year, 9 a.m. Sunday. I had one person in the audience to start. Slowly trickled in. So appreciate y'all coming a little early for me. I got close enough. I don't want to waste your all's time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully you're here to talk about cloud detection and response. Yeah, apparently he's not. Bye. Just kidding. So my name is Derek Volmering. I despise when people don't give me agendas. So here's a quick agenda. We're going to quickly do intro. I'm going to tell you about the problem that I'm here talking about, talk about some mitigating controls, some best practices we've kind of learned through deploying said tool, and then talk about some open source options if you don't have the budget or you just want to play around with this yourself. So quick reason why you maybe should listen to me. I am a recovering IT auditor. Any former recovering IT auditors? Nobody? No tomatoes? Okay. And that's important. Just I have a very risk-based mindset. I love to document things. I'm a passionate cyber defender. I first got interested when I was like 12. I may or may not have been torrenting stuff and got a virus on our family computer. Had to maybe clean it up before mom and dad got home. And I'm also kind of vengeful. So like from that standpoint, I was like, I really want to go after people that do that because it was kind of rude. And then head in the cloud. So right now I focus in cloud security at a Fortune 500 bank. I've been doing that for 6+ years. Been playing around with cloud environments for the better part of a decade. I have various certs. So I think combined with my certs and hopefully my work experience, I have some street creds to talk about cloud security related things. Quick shout out, if you haven't stopped by, we have a booth out there, Ohio Cyber Reserves. It's a group of volunteers. I'm not going to steal their spiel, but super cool group. If you reside in Ohio and you're in cybersecurity and you want to give back, it's a really great group. Again, we have a booth out there if you want to come talk to us. So let's get to the root of the problem. Who here has to maintain security of a traditional data center? Couple people? Trent? So our traditional tools, what do we normally do? We normally install an agent. That agent normally runs as root, system, admin, whatever. Traditional tools are not really meant for cloud environments. Cloud environments are meant to be dynamic, distributed, complex. When we try to use our traditional tools in a cloud environment, it creates blind spots. So there's a lot of things in cloud that you can't install your agent on. And even if you can install your agent, you don't have the same level of access to the resource. You also get alert fatigue because traditional tooling, they don't understand how cloud works. So if you have, let's just say, a Lambda that keeps firing, your traditional tool might say, hey, you have a million instances of this thing that just fired, but all you really have is one instance that you got to go contain. So you can really start to tire out your analysts. It also kind of creates slow responses. Many of us, if you're doing cloud right, you have multi-account approach. And so in order to do any response for that, you have your analysts that are having to log into multiple accounts and or use complicated CLI commands to jump around and actually address issues within different accounts. So again, my big example here is like EDR. You detect that you got malware on a virtual machine in the cloud. What do? Quarantine it. What happens when another one pops up in a minute? Because you didn't actually get to the root of the thing, which is the identity. And that's where a lot of the traditional tooling starts to fall short. It doesn't actually comprehend the management plane within the cloud, which kind of gives the context of who actually started that and how did they get access to start spinning things up. And kind of taking that a bit further, don't get me wrong, I love the cloud, but I do recognize there's a lot of challenges with the cloud. The first one is the attack surface. I'm not going to dive too deep into this because I've got a couple slides later that's just I'm going to really dive deep into attack surfaces, and then we'll just kind of high level talk about data overload. Anybody here, their company using cloud? Quite a few. Anybody want to throw out on average how many log records per day your cloud environments are producing? Yeah, last time I did it a couple weeks ago for us, we are at hit the wrong button. We were at like 220 some million records every single day. That's a lot of data. If you pump all of that to a SIM, if you're using Splunk or something, your sales team's going to love you, but your finance team's going to really hate you. So you have a lot of data, and that's just your cloud activity. That's not even considering you have to go figure out what all those resources that are deployed out in the cloud. You also have dynamic infrastructure. So as I said, you could have stuff spinning up, shutting down. It's not traditional where you have a virtual machine in a data center that stays stagnant. It's always up. It's a server you're expecting. With cloud, you have elasticity. So I'm going to spin more things up as I need them and turn them down. And then from a fragmented security perspective, every cloud vendor offers their own security solutions. You don't really want I don't personally want to be able to have to log into a bunch of tools in order to manage, especially if I'm multi-cloud, all the different security products. So to kind of hit this home a little further, if you haven't heard shared responsibility model, it's a thing regardless what cloud platform you talk about. So for on-prem, we own the entire stack. We can do whatever we want with it. Like I said, we usually install EDR. We give it all the access it needs, and we do everything we want. But when we move to cloud, we start to lose access. So we can't do everything, especially from a compute perspective. Your management control, your ability to do security things shifts from actually interacting with that resource itself to interacting at a management plane level. And what I mean is the cloud APIs. That's really where, as an analyst, your power in the cloud comes from. And who here has dealt with trying to figure out how log fields from various products all align? You got the same problem with cloud, right? I love this article from Red Canary because they call it out. This is a quick example from you got cloud share, so AWS, Azure, GCP, Okta, Netscope, they all use IP, but they're all labeled differently. So you have to then have an analyst that's knowledgeable enough to, at some point, go figure out how do we translate that in our SIM so that we can actually write detections across all of those different platforms and correlate it with our traditional, if you're a hybrid cloud, you have to also correlate that with on-prem stuff. I'm boring you, I know, but to get more spicy with this, guys, I know this is super hard to read on purpose, so this is a comparison. I also forgot to say, I'm not a heathen. I don't like light. I do dark mode. If you were here early, I had the background was black. It did not present well on the screen, so I did change it to white, so if there is weird reading problems, just know, I'll post the slides later. They're supposed to be black, so that's why this table is in black there. But what this table is showing is this is just a small glimpse of different features or services within cloud vendors and how each cloud vendor names them differently. Are you bored yet? So, and this gets even more fun. So every cloud vendor has a ton of services. AWS is leading the pack here. And guess what? If you guys want an early Christmas present, at the end or right after Thanksgiving, AWS has their reInvent conference, and they always drop probably at least 10 to 15 brand new services that all of us as security practitioners get to figure out what the hell does it do? How do I fix it? How do I protect it? So that's a nice little lovely thing you get to sort out before you go off to your holiday events, unless you block things, which, maybe that's your risk profile. You block until you have a chance to review. Highly recommend it, but you also start to get pressure from business that wants to use the new shiny thing that they just learned about at the conference. And to emphasize this, just to put the nail in the coffin, this is AWS, GCP, and Azure. This is the count of unique API endpoints, as well as API endpoints and IAM permissions. That's a lot, even just to learn one in and out. And I bring that up because the IAM permissions is important for your security analysts to understand. And because they all have different services, you have to know what all of that means, which just, again, makes this super hard. By the way, this is just the top three. You've got Cloudflare, you've got DigitalOcean, Alibaba, Oracle, maybe if you want a budget provider, that you have to go learn all of their stuff as well. So it gets really difficult. You have a variety. I'm a former auditor, so I like mitigating controls. You got a handful you could go for, right? So you can ignore that cloud exists and just pray. Pray for the best. That doesn't end up well. You can see a plethora of companies online that, they left S3 buckets wide open to the world. Some of them didn't even ignore it. They just didn't realize it. You can do a capes and unicorn approach. You hope that you get that rock star analyst that knows all the clouds. Good luck. They're probably, if you can find them, they're going to be really expensive and they might not stay long. You can invest in a cloud detection and response platform, which is why I'm here to talk to you. Or you can go back to 90s security. Anybody do 90s security where you just told them no, just stop doing the cloud? Let me know how that goes for your business. Might tell you, take a hike, we're gonna get a different person. So cloud detection and response, CDR, you'll hear me say CDR a lot because cloud detection and response is a bit much to say. It is a cloud native security approach designed to ingest, detect, and enrich and respond to cloud events. It's really designed to handle that ephemeral nature of the cloud. And I like to sum it up. It takes all the raw cloud the raw cloud activity, and it turns it into meaningful security insight, and it enables you to have the context to be able to quickly respond. But how? You're like, this is cool. It sounds like you're selling me a bridge here in Ohio. Again, Red Canary, if you're interested, this article is really, really great. They had some great visuals. And I really liked this visual because this is exactly what CDR does. Anybody familiar with the needle in the haystack? So again, talking about for us, like we're large. I work for a large financial bank, 220 million some log records a day, and we continue to use the cloud more. So that's only going to keep growing. Especially as AWS, Azure, GCP, they start introducing more services. We're going to keep consuming more services. So CDR, its power is it ingests all that data. It then helps you standardize. So we talked about how the logging fields are all different. A really good CDR product will abstract the requirement of understanding that Google calls this thing while AWS calls it this thing. But by the way, on-prem you call it this. A good CDR platform will roll that, standardize it for you, so you don't have to write all of those rules within your SIM to do it. It also allows you to enrich the data and combine it. So what's really nice about a CDR is if you integrate the right things, you can do, if you're hybrid, on-prem, as well as your cloud. If you're multi-cloud, you can do multiple. So you can actually track things over multiple different types of environments. A lot of good CDR products will also enable you to integrate with your existing ecosystem. So you can integrate your EDR platform so you don't have to go to a different tool. You can pull that in so you still have that visibility. And then last but not least, suppress and respond. So alert fatigue, right? If we know that there's normal users, I'm one of them. Part of my team is here and they can attest. I do weird stuff because I test a lot. And I test to try to figure out like, how do I make this detection go off? And they don't want to go constantly look at alerts for me, so they can quickly see like, it's Derek. I know he's working on XYZ. We just talked about it, so we can mute that so it doesn't pop up, and we don't have a random, third shift analyst go work something that they don't really need to work. And then it enables us to respond. So a good CDR platform, you should be able to do the response from that platform. Has anybody ever done like cross-account jumping in AWS? They made it easier so you can actually switch accounts without like logging in and logging out. It used to be an absolute wreck. But all of the cloud platforms, they all kind of struggle with, you have to log into one and then you jump to another account. And you can easily get confused what account you're in and accidentally do something on the wrong account. Highly recommend. That's a bad day. So key features, I list 10 here. I'm only going to talk about a couple. Most of them are self-explanatory, but from my big feature set, when we started the process of looking at a cloud detection response platform, one of the biggest things for me was a graph-based analysis. Again, our analysts are constantly looking at different things. They need to be able to quickly look at something. Who likes to like look at just raw firewall logs? Nope. One guy. I'll admit, I like it a little bit, but especially in a very ephemeral world, it's really important that I can get the picture quickly. So a good CDR product will give you some type of, most of them are using GraphQL stuff in the background in order to give you a quick context of, hey, here's the virtual machine. This is the identity that created it. This is the identity the virtual machine has, and this is what it just interacted with. Versus if it just came into my SIM, I would have to figure out, okay, what's the thing that just happened? So like, oh, the instant or the virtual machine has malware. Cool. Well, now I have to go do like 3 other queries to figure out what identity started that, what did it go do, where a CDR will actually give you all that in one graph, which is great. For us, one of the big things was custom response. The ability to deploy that, so most vendors will have some built-in stuff, but a lot of vendors aren't pushing a lot of responses because most responses need your all's business logic baked into them. So for me, I was looking for a platform. I don't want to manage a UI. Any UI developers here? Yeah, didn't think so. I hate UIs. If you have ever asked somebody, like you ask everybody in this room, like, hey, do you like dark mode or light mode? Do you like? I appreciate you're my people here. But everybody has their own opinion, so I didn't want to manage a UI, didn't want to manage my own API, didn't want to manage authentication, and a good CDR product allows me to focus on what I want to do, which is the responses, and then they take care of all the other stuff. And then I kind of mentioned already a robust ecosystem for integrations. I'm usually I was looking for a tool that can integrate with our identity platforms, that can integrate with our traditional security tools, because I'm really looking for the age-old single plane of glass in hopes that we can start to centralize that to make the lives of our analysts easier. And at the end of the day, I hope you can kind of start to see the value that CDR is starting to bring. It's reducing alert fatigue. So it's helping correlate information where we might write a detection that only, flags on this S3 bucket is public. In and itself, that may not be bad. I don't know, right? But if I have, let's just say I have tags on that bucket, or I have context of that's an account that hosts a website for a company, I don't need to go work that alert. It accelerates response. We already kind of talked about this. I can now, from one view, jump between accounts if I need to. One of the really nice things about a CDR platform is it brings all of the data. So most good CDR platforms offer kind of cloud security posture management light. So they kind of give you the entire cloud inventory in the tool. So I can quickly see, hey, here's the entire landscape. While I'm worried that this EC2 or this virtual machine, I can't even remember what Google calls their compute, it has malware, I want to quickly be able to see what else is in that account. Is this a test account that nobody uses, or is this a prod account that also has a database in it that has customer information? I want to be able to quickly identify that. And then it increases visibility. So one of the really nice things, and if you need buy-in, we'll get to this a little bit later, but from an audit, from a governance standpoint, one of the really nice things about a CDR platform is it allows you to quickly get visibility into your entire cloud landscape. So I talked about challenges, and then this is talking a little bit about how CDR addresses those challenges. From the attack surface management standpoint, one of the nice things, you can build a CDR yourself. The difficulty with that is you have to then be cloud. If you're in multi-cloud, you have to keep up with all the clouds. Every time a cloud vendor comes out with a new service, you have to integrate with those APIs. That's a full-time team. One of the nice things is if you pay a vendor, they keep up with that, hopefully, on your behalf. So you get that, and you get visibility into that attack surface baked into the product. The data overload, again, you're not pumping this necessarily onto a SIM, so you're not getting charged at the wazoo by your vendor, whether it's QRadar, Splunk, yada, yada. It helps you then enrich all of that data, so you can actually, even if you have a lot of data, helps you be able to narrow that down even more. They are built for discovering, so one of the things that a lot of people, has anybody used cloud security posture management? Handful of people. So if you're not familiar, cloud security posture management helps with gathering inventory of cloud environments, but also you can configure rules like, hey, I want to make sure all my volumes are encrypted, stuff like that. And those are great, but most of the time those are configured to be periodic scans. So they're hitting the management plane of the cloud environment. And so you might have a 12 to 24 hour delay before when you get the most recent updated information, where a CDR is actually using the logs as well as the management plane APIs. So they'll do that traditional CSPM scan to gather the inventory, but they're using those logs to figure out, hey, I just saw that there was an update to this EC2 that I know about. Let me refresh that data so my analysts have near real-time information on what that ecosystem looks like. Fragmented security, I kind of already hit on this, but you kind of move towards that unified visibility. So one platform, you're not jumping into multiple. And I hit the wrong button again. And then from an evolving threat standpoint, this is really where I think, from a CDR perspective, an ecosystem of integrations. I never want a vendor to do all of the things because they're probably not going to do all of the things well. I want to be able to use my existing tools and integrate them so that I can enrich stuff and interact with stuff. So if one of the things that I already talked about, but like identity is a critical component that a lot of us in a cloud environment, we don't necessarily use the cloud vendors' identity solutions. We use a IDP that the entire company leverages. If you don't have that information within the CDR tool, it's hard you have to do some cross tool jumping to figure out like, who is this actual identity? Are they logged in? Like if, let's just say you get an alert at 2 in the morning and it's me, is Derek doing a change? But wait, Derek is in Brazil. I don't think Derek lives in Brazil. That context is missing from there. And you might be thinking, Derek, haven't we solved this already? We got EDRs and NDRs and XDRs. So EDR, hyper-focused on endpoint. It's great at what it does. But again, if you can't install that agent and you can't have that access to at the sysadmin level, it's not going to get you very far. NDR focused on network, you're not really going to get the compute side of the house. XDR, I don't know, I feel like that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but XDR to me was a bunch of vendors trying to like just do some jazz. Thank you. She said bullshit. Sell shit, same thing, yeah. So like, there's some vendors have tried to argue that their XDR covers cloud, but it doesn't. I'm here to tell you it doesn't. I researched this for quite a bit. Cloud CDR is truly, it brings the cloud awareness, and that's what a lot of these tools are missing. But we got SOAR. Again, SOAR, I helped, full transparency, I chatted with ChatGPT about this, and it gave me a great analogy. So a SOAR is kind of like the muscle. You can use a SOAR in combination with the cloud or CDR, but the SOAR is only as good as like, hey, I want you to go do a thing, but it doesn't have that awareness to be able to integrate all the data that you want. You probably could plumb it to do it. It's just going to take a lot of work. From a SIM perspective, again, the SIM is the memory. It has all the stuff, but you still have to write the detections, and there's no response capability within a SIM. The CDR is really the brain. You can leverage a SIM. So there are some CDR platforms that can ingest the SIM data. You can not ingest into the CDR. You just have it read from the SIM. And then you could have it call a SOAR, but the CDR is really giving that awareness, the contextual awareness of what cloud is and how the cloud control plane plus all the identity stuff is interacting to give you a better picture of the cloud. So from our perspective, I'm just kind of quickly talking about our journey. At our company, we ended up going with a CDR platform. We had tried to homebrew our own. I would recommend you don't. It's not great. It's not fun. It's really hard, again, to get people's opinions on what they want because everybody has different opinions. High level, this is our approach. We picked vendors we wanted to partner with. We identified key stakeholders. We created QFD. I'll get to what that means. We did some proof of concepts. We picked a vendor and we profited. In my case, that just means I had a job. I'm staying employed. So So vendors, I am not here to sell you on any vendor. All the vendors we looked at, they had pros, they had cons. Let me Google that. Here's the top list of vendors that come back if you're interested as a starting point for looking at vendors. Would recommend that you talk to any companies out there, VARs out there that might be able to point you in the right direction of who they've had success working with and stuff like that. From a stakeholder perspective, I really encourage you. So from our standpoint, at my company, I was the team that was implementing and I was going to manage the product, but I wasn't the user of the product. We had an analyst team. So it was important that we partner with them to make sure we got their requirements. I also don't manage our platform for our cloud teams. I had to engage them because I have to deploy things to the cloud platform that run with a lot of permissions. So partnering with those teams, and I know you guys probably don't like to partner with governance and audit, but sometimes they can be your biggest advocates, because when you show them that they have one screen that they can go see all of the data, they get really excited. So QFD, when I first heard this, I was like, what the hell are you all talking about? We're doing Agile and Six Sigma and all that jazz. And I looked this up. I made the mistake of doing it at night. I had nightmares. So it's a structured framework for translating customer needs into so the whole idea is that you want to be able to clarify why the product is the one you want to go with data, not just a gut feeling. And as an auditor, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then I looked at it and I said, what the hell is that? And it scared me. And I was like, we are not doing that. But like all good engineers, I took the concepts and we modified it to what we wanted. So I do have an example out there. So I have a public GitHub repo. This is not the one we used. I used Hindsight. So we've already deployed a CDR. Leveraging what I've learned from that, I updated a QFD, what I wish I had when I started. So that's out there if you guys want it. In order to build your own, you can start from mine. I'm biased. I think it's pretty good. But you start with defining your requirements, and you got to weigh your requirements. Everything can't be important, because if everything's important, nothing's important. And talk to your customers, your stakeholders. That's where you drive those requirements and those weights. And then just POC them. And then once you do all this, you score each vendor, you multiply it by the weights, and you get quantifiable scores. So when your architecture team says, well, why this vendor over that vendor, you have evidence to say, this is how it played out during our proof of concepts. And speaking of proof of concepts, our process, again, was to leverage our QFD. That was our kind of North Star. That's how we approached all of our proof of concepts. DIY, I cannot tell you more strongly, test the shit out of these products. We got a lot of vendors selling a lot of things, and they're not always truthful with you. So make sure you're testing with your QFD all your use cases that you want. I've had a lot of vendors tell me their products do a lot of things, but then when I actually deploy them, and it always makes me nervous when they're like, well, let my sales engineer help you. I don't want sales engineers to help me. If I can't deploy your product by myself with just your documentation, I'm probably gonna have a bad time maintaining your product. So again, highly encourage you to DIY. My sales teams probably hate me, but I'm normally like, stay out of my way, let me deploy this, and if I have problems, I'll talk to you. And then use throwaway environments. I like this just because I can go and be reckless in the environment and know that future Derek's not gonna be cursing at me because I forgot something was deployed and then I'm stepping on myself in the future. From an implementation standpoint, we already talked about this. Partnerships are important. I can't stress enough. You can't do this alone unless you're in like a smaller company. For us, we have large governance processes, so I really had to get a lot of people to come help and support to explain why we needed a CDR. Codify deployments. If you're not doing infrastructure as code at this point, really encourage you to. It helps, one, auditability of your deployments, but two, if you screw something up, you can quickly redeploy, which is really nice. Train and test. How many of us have had companies deploy toys, sometimes they're toys, tools that nobody uses because we didn't get trained on it, and then 2 years later, we're like, why are we paying this money? So it's really important that you train and test. Again, I would encourage you, use your vendor, but I personally love when you get one person that's really an advocate of the tool in the company that then trains the rest of their team. And then prioritization. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, we need all of these detections, all of these responses. You got to figure out where to start. So work with your stakeholders to figure out what's that list of prioritized items. Best practices. So again, codify. You'll notice I'm an engineer, so codify everything. Infrastructure as code. Test and validate your detections and responses. I think that speaks for itself. You never want your detections to not fire or fire too much, and you want to be able to know that your responses, when somebody goes to click the button, it's going to work, because if it doesn't, they're not going to want to use your product, and then your product dies. Integrate as many tools as you can with that thing. So a CDR becomes more valuable the more data you give it that it can enrich and correlate with your cloud events. Continuous monitoring, so just like anything, you can't just set it and forget it. I know a lot of leaders want to set things and forget it because, hey, it's working, but if you're not paying attention to that thing, it's going to get stale. Clouds are constantly evolving, so CDRs have to constantly evolve, and if you're not keeping up with the release notes, your tool might break, and if you're not paying attention, it's a bad day for everybody. Oh, by the way, partnerships, super important. You'll notice some themes there. What's next? So some steps for us that I'm looking forward for us to take. Automated end-to-end testing. So I just mentioned it's great if you write a response or you write a detection and you do a test right then and it works. But what happens in 6 months? Maybe that custom response that you wrote, you're using a Python library from your cloud vendor and they deprecated that API. Do you know that that thing broke? Or is it going to be a year from now when one of your analysts actually tries to run it and they realize it's broke? So that's where automated end-to-end testing is super important. It'd be great if you could run it on a nightly basis, weekly basis, just to kind of get that reassurance that, hey, my detections are firing as expected, as well as my responses are working as expected. Tool integrations, we already talked about, just figuring out what tools you can plug in to give more context. If you haven't heard of MITRE, MITRE's a really good framework that you can map to. So when your leadership asks you, how do I quantify this? You can start to use MITRE in order to quantify some of this. MITRE actually has a framework catered for cloud stuff, which is great. So you can actually start to map your detections in the cloud against MITRE. They also just came out with, in MITRE 17, a response framework, so suggested responses and stuff. So you can start to map your responses as well, which is awesome. Purple teaming, I can't say this enough. Test the shit out of your product. And this is really where you can get some great stuff. So there's tons of open source projects. Backdoor and Breaches has a cloud version. It's really fun if you have your team in person. For lunch, you can play Backdoors and Breaches. It's basically a scenario card game where it's what happens if we do this. And people just throw out ideas. They could be wacky, but you can use your CDR to test and validate that. There's a couple, Grimoire from Datadog helps create log events that are fake, but actual things that you can write detections against. And then there's a number of tools out there, Pacu, Stratus, that are actually red team tools that you can use to actually create badness so that you can write detections to make sure that they're working. And then there's a few out there, so CloudGate or CloudGoat and SadCloud that actually deploy purposefully vulnerable things into cloud environments so that you can test things. And then red team ops, if you're lucky enough to have a red team, partner with them to make sure they're testing, to make sure your CDR tool works as expected. And you might be thinking, that's cool, like what kind of responses can we do? Really, it's whatever, your imagination has. So, the classic ones here, I have a publicly exposed S3 bucket. Maybe my company's policy is we don't ever have public buckets. I can either have my analyst go in, with the CDR platform, do that. But a lot of good CDR platforms actually allow you to automate that. So where you can in your business, obviously a risk appetite question, but if your business allows you, like if you have statements of we should never have public S3 buckets, you can actually have your CDR automate that so that your analysts never have to touch it, which is great. Another one for us is like logging. There are certain logging configurations that nobody should ever touch. We know what identities should touch those, and if an identity outside of that touches it, we could respond either manual or again in an automated fashion for something like that. Because if I lose login, then my tool's broke and I start to miss things. And I could go on, but we'll skip on from that. So one thing, I'm a huge home labber. I love open source. So my first thought was, I want to give the audience something they can play with. CDR tools, fair warning, they're not cheap because it's hard to do. So I started searching around there, like what open source tools are out there. There's a lot of CSPM open source tools. Prowler is a really big one out there, but not a lot of, I actually didn't find any CDRs. One of the closest things I thought I found, there's an open source tool called Threat Mapper, which claims to be an open source CNAPP, so Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. CDR is a part of a CNAPP. So I was like really excited. I was like, okay, this is really cool. But then I started reading, and one, they require registration to get the threat intel database, which kind of made me a sad panda. I'm not super big on when companies make me register for open source things. But then I also found out that they're a CNAPP, but they don't actually have a CDR aspect, which again, sad face for Derek. So I was like, well, what if I could make my own? Fair warning, I am not a genius. I am literally trying to duct tape different products, open source products together. It is broke right now. Wazoo is giving me fits. So fair warning, if you go look at it, I have a little kid and time was not in my favor. I was trying to finish it before this project, but I started this project called Nimbus Guard. It had a couple different names, ended up on that. And what I've tried to do is pull together various open source tools that give you that CDR-like feeling. Downside is, the reason there is no open source CDR is that the intelligence aspect is super hard to do, and that's a missing piece that I haven't figured out how to do yet. So, I've got the cloud inventory aspect figured out. There's various aspects, but that intel piece, apparently, and I guess CDR, like cloud's hard. I don't know. Nobody told me when I first got into the cloud that it was gonna be hard, but I also got stickers. However, fair warning, when you order stickers, you should probably get out a tape measure. I like let it auto pick the size for me. This was late at night. Like I thought about this like on Monday, and there was like very few vendors that could get me my stickers in time. I didn't notice that it changed the proportion to 2 inches by 1 inch. Anybody know how small that is? It's pretty small. Benjamin's got one out there. If you're interested in a sticker, I got stickers. Again, they're small, but I personally like my little cloud dude. Again, shout out ChatGPT. I said, give me I think my exact quote was, I want a fierce but yet friendly cloud guard. And that's what I got. I think he's adorable. With that, Order 66, I'm open for questions. I really appreciate y'all's time. That's all I got. Questions? One.
How did you convince various stakeholders, one, say yes, this is my portion, and two, own it?
It is a great question. So it has been a long, we've been talking about cloud detection and response for the better part of 2 years now. Like I said, my team originally tried to homebrew a solution, and then we found out like managing your own API is hard. Then we found out that like our customer wanted a UI, and we're like, nah, fam, like that's not my style. But that was before CDR was a thing. So technically CDR, the acronym CDR has been around. There's like early references like 2018 from Sysdig, but it didn't really get popular until I would say 2-ish years ago. There were a few vendors that popped up. One of them that like kind of did it, that really started everything was Gem Security. They really hit and it became aware for everybody when Wiz bought them for a very large amount. and then Alphabet bought Wiz for a very large amount, and I think people realize, oh, CDR is a thing. And you've started to see a lot more companies pop up with CDR platforms. So the market kind of helped us there, right? So, constantly telling my management, like, we need a tool like this. My team at the time, we owned CNAP, so it kind of made sense that we were pushing it. I also partnered with my threat analyst to say, hey, how can you tell your bosses, like, cloud's hard, like, you need help. Just trying to do a bunch of SIM queries isn't working. You got to jump from account to account, partnering with red teams to prove, like, hey, our ability to respond, especially if that attack is in multiple clouds or multiple accounts, we're slower, right? So trying to measure what that looks like. In terms of ownership, interesting. We brought it in, but then from our perspective, my team, my current team that I'm on, we're more focused on like a developer standpoint. So my management realized that we probably shouldn't own the CDR aspect. So we're in the process of transitioning that to our threat team, who has an engineering arm that's going to own it long term. Any other questions? Yeah. I think one of the things that I didn't, until we started getting real data in the tool, one of the things I didn't realize was so powerful was the graphing capabilities. Its ability to correlate multiple events versus, like, if I'm just looking at pure log history from Azure, GCP, AWS, I have to figure out what that key identifier is, query for that, and track it. From a CDR perspective, I can just say, hey, this event, and it will correlate other events. So, like, if I want to see the start of a virtual machine, it'll actually tell me what identity logged in and started it, and then it'll go further and tell me it then did, let's just take a malicious example, that virtual machine started a serverless function that then called a queuing service that was public that then was a C2. So that really was super. I mean, if you try to do that in a traditional SIM, you're writing multiple queries, or your query is like this long, and it's just a bad day for everybody. Yeah, yeah, and just its ability to tell you, like, you might be hyper focused on that EC2 or that Lambda because that's what fired the detection, but it also gives you, like, what did it do? Versus, like, and from that standpoint, if you didn't know what it did and you had a SIM, you'd have to go figure out, okay, now I'm going to pivot. I found the host. Now I got to go pivot from there. And then if that did something, you got to go pivot from there. The really cool thing from my standpoint, like, if you don't know, identity is key in the cloud. And you can do a lot. If you can contain the identity, you can really kill access. And I think a CDR, where it shines, is you might have detections off of the compute, but what you really want is the identity. What identity do I need to go isolate to stop this from propagating? Especially with infrastructure as code, I can write some Terraform that I can spin up 10 servers in whatever cloud environment you want. And if you start to take them down, I can just run my Terraform again. And then all of a sudden, your team that thought they had contained it, it's all back again. Versus if I could figure out quickly what's that identity that started all of this, I kill that, and then now my team can take some time to figure out how did they, obviously got in there, but, like, how did they get that identity and such. 2 minutes? Got 2 minutes. I know a lot about whiskey. I can start giving you whiskey facts. Nah. All my whiskey facts. Woo. Pardon? Depends if you're in Europe or not. Or if you're talking about whiskey, scotch, or bourbon. But yeah. My favorite one? It depends my mood. My go-to is probably Woodford just because it's very consistent. What we got? Nothing else? I think everybody's done. We're all tired. We look sleepy.
Who needs a CDR?
Everybody that's in the cloud.
Who needs a CDR? Where did you get the full shirt?
The cool shirt, you missed that already. I had a slide in here. Again, if you're not familiar with the Ohio Cyber Reserves, we got a booth out there. I'd love to give you our spiel. We're always looking for volunteers.